Good afternoon. I'm Keri Shull, and I am so excited to be here with Menna. Today, we're going to be talking about different communities that are going to knock your socks off, that are options if you're looking to find a place that is a little lower maintenance, a little less stress, and you may be ready to move to the next step. So, Greg, you have a lot of experience in different communities in the area. I want to go really deep and learn about different communities that may be attractive to some of our listeners.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to be with you as always. And what I would say is each community is in a specific neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the first important element to consider. Where do you live right now? What do you enjoy? What has your lifestyle been like for the last several years? Maybe 10 years, maybe 20. I don't want to say maybe 40. I didn't say that. But that's the most important thing to consider first. And one of the neat communities it's actually coming soon. It's not yet open. It's going to be opening in probably Q2, so maybe in April 2025, is one of Kisco's signature communities in the Palisades called the Fitzgerald. And
sounds very fancy.
Well, so it is fancy. Not outrageously so, but they call it the Fitzgerald because it's in line with the feel. So it's more of an Art Deco inspired design inside. It's not a high rise, right? Because it fits the Palisades. Okay. That neighborhood, right? The Palisades it's a very tight knit community, and a lot of the folks that they're going to be incoming members at the Fitzgerald, they're from in and around the Palisades. You have folks actually everyone coming from Denver, and we're moving them. But most of the folks are actually coming from the neighborhood in the Palisades. So when I say neighborhood is the first thing to think about, right? It's whether you want to remain somewhere like where you are now, even right next to where you are now, that you're used to, that fits like a glove, or whether you'd like something new, whether maybe it reflects somewhere you've loved to visit. In the past, maybe it's something like some of the communities in beautiful scenic Winchester, maybe it's Village at Orchard Ridge, or it's Westminster, Canterbury, Shenandoah Valley, amazing communities out there that have scenery that would be a total change from something like the Palisades if you lived there, right? So there are multiple approaches to it.
Sure. So if somebody is listening to this and they say, ooh, Art Deco. Oh, I like the idea of the Palisades. Can you tell us a little bit about is it a buy? Is it a rent? How would it work?
Yep. So the Fitzgerald and its sister community is called The Carnegie, and that's in Gaithersburg. Okay. And those are Kisco Senior Living's first two communities in this region. Okay. So forgive me, but I'm filling in some gaps in understanding that I had before I learned all these things. Kisco was started by a gentleman named Andy Kohlberg. He actually is one of the owners of the Phoenix Suns. He's a pretty cool guy. But he said, I want somewhere amazing for my own mom to retire to. I love my mom. I'm going to take care of her. So he started Kisco Senior Living.
That's so cool.
Really cool.
I automatically love him.
Right. Really neat. And so they actually just had their grand opening. They've been open for since August, but they had their grand opening last week. And the reason I mentioned them is because we're moving a gentleman that's coming to the Fitzgerald, not open yet. We're moving him to the Carnegie first because it's a sister community until that community opens. He decided time to make the move.
I'm doing it.
Yeah. So the Fitzgerald, very different than the Carnegie. Same, it's a sister, but it's very different in that the design feel, everything about the interior, the actual structure of the building, it has to be fit into the Palisades neighborhood. So it has to not look like it's jammed in. It has to mold with the surroundings, but then inside different. And so it's not a purchase, it's a rental. Okay. And there are benefits to both. One of the benefits of a rental is I can try it, right? This is something I can try. And if I love it, great, I'm going to stay. If maybe there are some things that I'd like to look at something else, then I can move to something else, right? So that's
maybe if I just think I might want to stay in the same vibe that I have now, but eventually I might want to be out in Winchester. You're not committed, and you can have the opportunity to evolve as life changes.
Absolutely. And something you'll find with most of these decisions is usually you may be making that decision to be near your adult children and their grandchildren. Let's be honest, like with my parents, they only care about the grandchildren. They're not concerned about the children anymore. So the decision is often corollary to, I'd really like to be near my adult children, right? So maybe it's a move initially to, and then, well, my adult children, they've also moved maybe more out into Loudoun, or maybe they're even out towards Winchester. If they're in Loudoun, maybe they're looking at Ashby Ponds as an option. One of the amazing operators in the United States, Erickson Senior Living. I mean, they're a cut above in how they handle the entire process, right? A full life plan community, and they have this amazing thing called the Benevolent Care Fund, where it's a buy-in. So you're purchasing at Erickson, so different than maybe the Fitzgerald. You're buying your home at the Erickson communities at Ashby Ponds in Loudoun. But then, should something befall you, right? And you've gone through all the due diligence financially, but should something befall you, you're part of that community, and now their Benevolent Care Fund would take care of you for the rest of your time living at the community. So a really amazing option. And obviously those are two very different structures, to rent versus to buy. But if you are looking at the best operators, they're going to figure out how to make sure that it's a great fit for you as well as for them. They'll make sure you're taken care of, the really good operators and the great communities. So if you're looking at, maybe I'd like to try something initially, and then you might want to purchase something eventually, like you said, in a different spot because your kids decided, okay, we've got a new job somewhere else. All right, we want to be near them. Great. And that's kind of to think through that process. There are options. You can find the right fit as you move through the process.
I have to say something, because I'm imagining some people watching are like, oh, the idea of moving is awful. Well, keep in mind, you've been living in your current home for 20, 30, you said it earlier, I'm not saying it first, 40 years plus, right? And you've accumulated all these things. But as you're transitioning out, part of what Greg's team does is help you figure out what is going to go with you. And that means you're going to have so much less weight. You're going to have so many less things. So it will be easier if you decide you want to do this pit stop and stay in the same vibe that you're used to and then do something in the future. The weight won't be the same. It'll be so easy. He could handle that in a couple of hours and have you all moved into your next situation. So I think sometimes that might seem overwhelming when in fact it really would feel much different in the future.
That's very true. So like we were saying, the first thing to decide is where you use the word vibe. I like that. The vibe that you're looking for, the location, right? As in any real estate decision, the location is everything, right? And in this circumstance, the location means lifestyle, right? Yeah. So we've mentioned a few kind of very wide ranging. You have more out in the scenic in a Winchester setting, or maybe not quite all the way out to a Winchester, but maybe in Loudoun, maybe in Ashby Ponds. Actually, Goodwin House is actually launching a more in Loudon too.
Really?
That's coming up, yeah. And they're one of the most
this is
well-respected operators. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's
it's
so
challenging.
Many amazing options, and just the fact that there's all these options can feel overwhelming. But the reason Greg and I wanted to do this series is to have you feel like you don't need to spend all of your personal time doing the research. We've done the research for you, and we're giving you everything that we've learned over the years, one community at a time, one location at a time, so that you can really decide how to narrow the list. Some of you watching this may be saying, I would only rent. And some of you watching this are saying, I would only buy. Well, the good news is you can take our list and filter, and then you can focus on the communities that match your needs. Some of you are thinking, I would only live in DC. And some of you are thinking, I would never live in DC. But you doing the research on your own is overwhelming and takes a long time. So hopefully the resources we have in this podcast series will help you feel confident that you've explored all of the options and really good about where you're going to end up. So let's imagine Winchester. Let's stay there for a second. Someone says scenic. Since we just went down the DC path, what are the options out in Winchester that people should consider?
Yep. So two of the communities that we have the chance to serve folks moving in, because that's obviously my specific focus is to help on the move process, right? With our team at JK is an extensive team, but very detailed. We move the president every time. So we're about to be at work in multiple capacities for both folks that were involved. But that involves a lot of detail and involves teams that need to know how to take care, right? So that's the interesting portion of the equation on my end. And when we bring folks out to Winchester, it's usually to Westminster Canterbury at Shenandoah Valley. Westminster Canterbury is an operator, and it has Shenandoah Valley, and then it will have a couple others, maybe Charlottesville and Richmond.
Okay.
And then you'll have the village at Orchard Ridge, and the village at Orchard Ridge is actually a Lutheran-run community. There's kind of a Lutheran operator, and so those two they're actually very near each other. They're both very beautiful, and they essentially have a campus layout that's really varied, and it provides really good options. So you'll have a normal multi-level apartment style, and then you'll actually have villas. So you have more maybe two units on a floor in a separate building.
Okay.
So that's a brand new. That's actually being launched November and December right now.
Wow.
And we're getting to participate in a lot of those moves, and I do the floor plans. And I'm like, wow, these are big moves, because these are 2,000 square foot apartments. They're downsized, but it's not nearly as much of a downsize. And then Village at Orchard Ridge, right nearby, also a beautiful community. It also has cottages, so even just separate homes on the property, right?
Wow.
So those are very different options, right?
Yeah.
Those are the traditional understanding. You'll often hear, they're going to a facility, or I'm going to, and that's not really how it is now. So that evolution in expectation of service and of offering, that's real, and it's happening even in more scenic areas, as well as more kind of evolving urban, suburban areas.
I was going to joke, it feels like when I'm talking to some of the people that are moving, there's a magnetic pull, right?
Yeah.
It used to be like, no, I don't want to do that. Now it's like, whoa, there's all these activities, and there's gourmet food, and there's this beautiful home that I won't have to worry about any maintenance.
This is an amazing, this morning I was doing a floor plan consult with a client, for the daughter on behalf of her mom. I was not supposed to be known, my presence, because there are some interesting, mom loves where she is, but she's really looking forward to moving to the Carnegie, and her friend already lives there, and her friend told her, to be honest, I'm kind of exhausted at the end of every day because there's too many things for me to do. That's a quote. Like I am quoting her directly. So it's not at all what people imagined if you're purely from the outside and you haven't dived into this yet. The level of activity and programming and interesting things, not silly, but interesting.
Pottery and
visits to art galleries in DC, right? Events at maybe the Spy Museum. I know that's a partnership with the Carnegie that they had. So very interesting elements to life, and it's up to you to pick, right? And she was saying she's going to have to start turning things down.
It's so funny. It reminds me of, I went on semester at sea. 700 students on a ship traveling around the world. In some ways, this evolution gives you that ability to have all these friends that are living in the same area, that are participating in the same social activities. And for a lot of people, it's this like energy change that is so exciting, right? So, okay, we've talked about Winchester. We love the idea, and there's going to be attachments that we have with this podcast series, so you guys can actually look at what are those 2,000 square foot floor plans? What would a cottage look like? What would I get? And then we're going to attach all of that so you can review it. And let's imagine that you're at a point where you want to think about moving. There's two ways Greg and I can help you. One, if you're thinking, well, how much is my current home worth and how long would it take to sell? We can come and sit down with you and have a very low stress, easy conversation to walk you through all the data and the process. So you just have the information. And once you're armed with information, that's really powerful because it gives you a data point in your process. But for a lot of clients, they don't want to feel pressure,
Mhm.
right? They want the information without the pressure. So you can rely on us to deliver that, to make sure that we have all of the statistics, all of the information, and we give it to you to make decisions.
So that's a really good, forgive me for interrupting, that's a really good, it segues nicely into one of the operators I mentioned, Ericsson. So what's interesting for them is they have communities in very different settings, right? So they're about to open the Grandview, which is their first high rise. It's right at Democracy Boulevard in Potomac and Bethesda.
Yeah.
And again, that's the first. And Ericsson's a large enterprise, but they're very high quality, and they operate their communities with extreme vigilance to making sure that the community is at the highest level of occupancy, because obviously that's a well-run business, but it's also because they know that then that leads to a great lifestyle. If it's full, it feels vibrant. So you have the Grandview. They just opened Woodley Chase in Fairfax, right? So that's a little bit more suburban, right there off of Braddock Road.
Okay.
And you're looking at a price range, I think, from maybe 700 to even 1.2 million for some of the larger units to buy,
Okay.
right? So that's a different thing, and that feeds right into your conversation about what's the value of your home.
Mhm.
And Ericsson's team, right? So the reason I brought in Ericsson is because their process is no pressure. So they have something called the priority list, right? So the priority list works for each of their communities. So maybe you start out thinking, the Grandview is pretty cool. That's that high rise, but then I went and saw Woodley Chase in Fairfax. I kind of like that. Then I went and saw Ashby Ponds in Loudoun. And I said, okay, well, that's a little bit further out. So, I'm in Loudoun, it's a little different feel. I'm a little closer out to maybe some, Middleburg, maybe some horse events. And you're not quite sure. Being on the priority list with Ericsson, it's $1,000 refundable deposit.
Wow.
And you can go to their events, right? So you can go to the breakfasts that they hold, the maybe some cocktail hours, and you can learn about the communities. You can learn the price points, and it's entirely non-committal. And they'll also
you
give
can
you
access the vibe.
Exactly.
My vibe board.
Yeah.
You can meet the people and figure out, do I like this? Would I want to be here or not? I think it's amazing that they do that, because you get to kind of try it on for size.
Yep. And they swear by it. They want you to come and enjoy their great events, because they're pretty confident. And even if it's at another, I'm visiting another one right in Green Spring in Springfield, which is kind of their the original, and Riderwood and Silver Spring, right? They're in each of these places, totally different feel. But if you're on that priority list, you can go and visit and get an understanding. Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. So we're gonna have a list of the communities for you that might be a good fit. Of those communities, are they all buys?
So for Ericsson, yep, those are all buy, and they're it depends, because they've evolved. It's either between 80 to 90% refundable investment, essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, so it is a buy, and like I said, included in that also is the benevolent care fund, which then you're taken care of no matter what. So they go through a very intensive financial evaluation process, right? And that's where I mentioned that, because on your end, if then you understand that process and you can be complimentary to them as they think that through, and then that's really helpful to the community as well, then it's a good decision. Whatever the decision you actually come to was well informed, not just from that first thing we said, the vibe, the location, the feel, but also it's a good fit for the financial end with my family, with myself. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the fund, just because naturally I'm curious, and I'm sure some people are, how does that work? If somebody runs out of money, you said that they're cared for life? Yeah.
So because it's a continuing care community, right? So obviously, the financial evaluation up front is to ensure that you'll be fine, right? And that your the hard work you've done in your life will cover you. But life is always changing, and there are curveballs, and so that fund is an amazing part of it. And I know about it just because I went to their benevolent care fund ball a few times, and it's a big part of their community to know that. Right, each of their communities to know that,
because everyone has peace of mind and security.
Right.
And wow, what a gift.
Right.
That's something that would be certainly interesting we'll link something to that just so you can have a little bit more information about it. Okay, so what's the lowest price point for an Erickson community, would you say?
Well, it's probably in that, it's in the
700s.
Yeah, that's probably where it's going to be. And I don't have the most updated pricing on especially on the newer buildings, but it's typically going to be maybe down to the 600s for a Greenspring or some of the Ashby, because those have they've been around longer.
Sure.
So for the newer communities where it's all new build and then you're going to typically probably 600 is where you'll be.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, and something to bear in mind, just for the clients who are here locally, the amount of equity you're likely to have in your home from living there for 20 to 30, 40 years in this area, it's substantial. So I've helped a lot of clients that are really fearful or concerned about money in the long term. And when we run the numbers, it often, again, it gives you such peace of mind and clarity, like, I'm going to be good.
Right.
I'm going to be great. And I have a lot of freedom. So that might be something that's helpful to do. Even if you feel like you're not at the point where you're ready yet, being armed with the information will be extremely helpful. And then on your side of it, a lot of times the logistics can be overwhelming. So can you talk a little bit about how you do space planning and how that might support a decision? Yeah.
So when that first idea around, all right, vibe, where am I going to be, location, and we start, okay, I think we're going to be more in this type of realm. Then the next question is what do I think the size of apartment I would like, right? Just like when you buy a home, how big do I want my home to be, or how small can I have it and still have a great feel, right? So that process, again, that's challenging, and the best thing to do is to just look at it logically, right? So for these communities, you can say, hey, this is the floor plan, right? Almost every community has the floor plans on their sites. Then you can just straight up go through and look at every single model, right? And you can say, because everybody has very specific desires, so you can say, all right, I like this. One of the neat ones at the Carnegie I like would be the Laurent C. That floor plan's great because it's a 2-bedroom, and the bedroom is actually bigger than some of the other overall larger floor plans. And so I like that one personally just because it's easier to create a good floor plan. Having a bigger bedroom just helps, right? But so you'll see what's most important to you in your lifestyle. Do you want to have a den? Are you still someone who loves to be at a desk and you're working on things? Or do you not need that? Do you want to have a bit of a bigger kitchen, right? Or are you just going to take advantage of the unbelievable dining that you have serious chefs at almost all these communities, right? So that floor plan.
I want the dining.
That's right. So that floor plan, that can be done way in advance of all of this, right? So if you come in, I would come in and I visit with folks in their current home. It could be a 7,000 square foot home. It could be a 2,700 square foot home. And it's simple. We just talk. I learn, okay, this is the floor plan you're looking at. I probably found that out before because I need to get it into my digital iPad-based software. And then we walk through and measure. It's simple, right? It's a simple hands-on, you measure the pieces of furniture that you'd like to bring. Then we sit down and we drag them around, we move them around, and we come to the best approximation of what you have at your current home. Those key kind of areas that you like, maybe a specific piece, something that's really valuable to you. We figure out, all right, how can we get that, and how can we feature it in the space, or how can we shape the space as a whole and bring as many of the pieces that we like, but be comfortable and have it look presentable and wonderful. And that now has given us a picture, right? So that really daunting, it's a literal picture, right? You cannot see, how could I possibly be coming from this home that I've been in for so long and I have so many things? And if you just start the process there, then you can see, okay, it is possible,
this
right?
Works.
Or, you know what? I think I want to go up. I want to get a little bigger. Right. I want to go for a bigger floor plan, right? Or sometimes, you know what? let's just go. We'll bring it down a little.
Yeah.
We really want the landlocked cruise idea. We're not going to spend all kinds of time in our new home. We'd rather be out doing things. We're free to be moving around now.
Yeah.
Right. So either way, if you have that initial picture of what is possible, then right there you now have the next set of steps to think about.
Yeah. I think it's so important to just take the next step. When you start thinking about, oh, I have to take this step and this step and this step and this step, it can feel overwhelming. But when you just focus on what's the next step, right now you're doing the first step, and that's just educating yourself on the options. And that part can be really fun because you're imagining what life would feel like in all of these different communities. And then as you start to get more serious about the location and the type of home that you want and whether you're thinking of a buy or rent, you can dig into all of the links that we have and start studying the floor plans. And some of the floor plans will be a turnoff. They won't like them, right? And others you'll think, oh my gosh, I was never expecting that I could get something like this, and it might really surprise you. But my guess for a lot of people, they just want to feel like they've done the research. And then the space planning part for my clients, because I've done a lot of space planning over the years, there tends to be a couple pieces that are really sentimental and important, right? And you want to make sure that you can incorporate those or think through, is there a family member that would want this kitchen table? Because I don't need a kitchen and a dining room, and I'm obsessed with my dining room table. And so how do we make it work? A lot of times that exercise of doing that frees you up to then get really excited about it. And you're just ready emotionally to make the next step when it feels good to you.
And that's a great point, because the next step is the only thing you can do, right? None of us can take more steps than the next step. We think we can, but we can't. Everyone can handle one step at a time, right? So that process is amazing. And I've watched it work in the past 2 weeks. And I was doing one this morning, right? And it narrows down, it eliminates ideas. That's not going to work, right? Or, well, we can now do this, right? That's happened a couple times recently where, we actually can fit that. Man, I'm so happy about that now, right? So, and then sometimes I've had to go and measure like incredible down to inches to find, all right, I think this is going to do it, right? To transport some kind of wall unit, right? Something that's a serious and practical piece. As long as you can figure out, well, is there a solution and is there a place? Then we can shape around it. But taking the step helps. It then helps you to figure out what your decision needs to be ultimately. Right? Because you might, again, we're talking to folks that it might be a hazy picture to them, right? There are a lot of pieces that are kind of floating in the air. And this helps to, all right, now we're moving towards, okay, what's possible? And then you're changing your thinking changes.
Right.
Now you can, okay, I'm going to go to all these happy hours. I'm going to learn. I'm going to go to the breakfast. I'll join the priority list and I'll see, I like the way they make floor plans here. Don't like them so much over here, but I'm not sure I want to be in this area. Maybe I'd rather something neat in DC. Maybe I'd rather be a little more suburban in Fairfax. Balancing each of those. But if you start moving, now you can get into it.
So we've talked about Winchester, right? We've talked about a couple of the communities in Fairfax. What are the other options that are kind of in the suburbs, but not all the way to Winchester?
So we have some neat things going on in Alexandria, so Old Town. Right, so Old Town has several neat communities, and Old Town is just an amazing and unique place in and of itself, right? Old Town and Georgetown, DC have a lot of feel that's similar, right? They have that old character. And Old Town is on the way to Mount Vernon. It's steeped in history. You can't help but, in some senses, tripping on the uneven cobblestones as you walk. It's amazing. But right amidst Old Town now, you have kind of that Potomac Yard. So you have new, really nicely made things going in. A community that's been open for a few years there called The Landing. Is excellent. The team that works there is a terrific team. This is a rent. It's higher end. Their focus is certainly on a nice lifestyle. They have had such demand for some of the larger floor plans, the independent living, that they're launching an expansion next year in 2020, well actually 2026, called the Riviera, right? So clearly that name is it's thinking about water, right? So Old Town, you're on the water, right? So all of a sudden that's a very different feel than right in the Fairfax area or the Loudoun or even Winchester. You're on the water.
Yeah.
Right. So and that's a really neat opportunity to have, and I think they're going to be 8 or 9 stories. So
oh my gosh, you're having your coffee in the morning, looking at the Potomac.
It's beautiful.
So cool.
So that's a whole other option, right? A different look. And then Brightview, which is another solid operator. Their communities are great, and their team, they're truly caring and neat people. I've gotten to know several of them over the last several years. They're opening in Alexandria as well. So they're in Fairfax, and now they're also going to open in Alexandria. So you also have those opportunities, right? Yeah. So because Alexandria is unique, as you know very well.
I love
it.
That
is unique,
area.
Right?
So many restaurants and just I love. There's the place where you can go, and there's a couple of restaurants on the water, and you can't possibly pick a bad one. They're all delicious, and they're all right there, and you can sit out and watch boats, and there's a big grassy park, and all the planes are going by. I just think that area is so cool. So once again, the names of those buildings, in case you're trying to see what to click below.
The landing. And the Riviera, that's kind of the expansion off of the landing.
Okay.
And then you'll have Brightview, Alexandria. Okay. So those are a few. And if you went a little further south towards Springfield, kind of tucked away though, or in a wooded area, Green Spring, that's also Erickson. So, and that's one of the kind of the term now the kids would say the OG, right? It's been around. It's the most established, and it's wonderful. The team there, again, every Erickson community, the teams they're amazing, and they're typically there.
OG is an original gangster.
That is the term. Well, I don't know if that's acceptable to air. But,
I think all of you believe that's acceptable, but that's funny. Yeah. So they've what that says to me is they've been around for a long time, and they're very good at what they do. And
the teams stay. The teams have been there. The people on their teams are 10, 20 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the director, Greenspring, really neat guy. He actually started in dining as a teenager, and now he's the sales director for the community. Franklin, he's something else. So that's a community that's in Springfield, Green Spring. So that spring, and then there's another. And we're actually going to be doing a move there soon. It's called the Fairfax. That's near Fort Belvoir. Okay. Right. So that's even a little bit further down. Again, a beautiful kind of wooded open campus. You actually have also separate cottages there. So that's operated by Sunrise, and they're very well known, and it's one of their monogram collections. So it's a bigger community, just more. It's open, more expansive. Again, a wonderful team there. So you have from Springfield, you have Green Spring, then you have the Fairfax, which is near Fort Belvoir. Then you're coming up to Brightview, which is opening very soon, probably 5 months from now. Then you're to the Landing and the Riviera. So that little stretch all around 95, all down more close to the water, amazing, right? So and those are all, they're different. Some are purchased, some are rent. Different lifestyles, great teams at each of them, but they're all. Each one of them, someone can find the right fit.
Okay. Wow. So if we were, I guess when we put together our information, we'll have one kind of email that shows you, here's all the options you can rent. We'll have another one that shows you, here's all the options you can buy. And now as I'm listening to you, I think we need one that says, hey, if you want a cottage, here's your choices. Right. Because some people listening to this go, oh, I want a cottage. That's what I'm going to have a cottage.
And everybody does, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And then some of you go, yuck, I don't want anything to do with that. Right. I just want to have a really condensed space that I come back after having a fun day, and then the next day I go out and socialize all over again, and I'm having brunch in Old Town, and then I'm having dinner with friends, right? Okay. So what have we not talked about that would be important to talk about? We haven't talked about Tysons.
We have not talked about Tysons. As everyone who has lived in this area for a while, and I'm one of those people, I know that I may look like I'm 10 years old. I'm not. I'm 15 and a half. That's a joke. I wouldn't be filming with Keri probably, but I probably wouldn't have all this knowledge.
What do you mean? Are you talking about me?
No, I'm saying I wouldn't have this knowledge.
He just called me old. Did you
No,
guys hear that?
that's in no way. I would not have had the time to acquire this knowledge.
Trying to save himself.
Well, Tysons is really interesting. So, in the last year, two of the very kind of the most well respected operators, and one of them is unique in that they essentially are helping to write the book on how you age gracefully and well and kind of in a lively fashion. The Mather, right? So that has opened in Tysons, and that is I would call that kind of the highest price level. That's the highest level of luxury. Those are often these are purchase, and these are typically 7-figure apartments. It's a I believe 17 stories. So it's a significant building, and it's near the Capital One headquarters in Tysons. It's near the Capital One Hall. And that whole area is really tying together now. You have a lot of it's becoming a cosmopolitan feel.
Oh yes, yeah.
So the Mather is right to that lifestyle. It's continuing care. It's a life plan community, right? So within the high rise, you would have specific floors designated towards assisted living and higher levels of care. And then you also have the option. You can certainly bring in any care or services that you desire as a resident, but it's beautiful, breathtaking to feel. It's floor to ceiling windows, some and usually curved, some are 22 to 2,400 square foot apartments. It's beautiful. Then right up the hill, the Trillium, also by Silverstone, so the same company and team that has launched the Landing in Alexandria and will launch the Riviera. Same team has launched the Trillium.
Okay. That
just opened in August. I know their team; they're wonderful folks. We've helped clients move into the Trillium, and they're open and they're renting now. That's going to be on the higher price point. It's incredible convenience, and also it's I think 11 stories. So it's a high-rise feel as well, and it overlooks, it's the borough, and so you have a Whole Foods, you have some terrific dining options, kind of right next to each other, right?
That area has gone from being like kind of ho-hum to like, whoa.
Yes.
Really cool. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't been to Tysons for a while, I want to suggest that you go visit these communities before you make up your mind, because you may end up, choosing one of the others, and then you go see the Trillium or the Mather, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is just stunning. So I think it would be worth it to investigate. And if you're looking for support in that investigation, we would love to help you.
Yeah, and speaking of which, a note about the Trillium, their team is really neat. And Brian, the executive director, he actually comes from hospitality. So he has a very interesting approach, different. He and I dress similarly because that was his realm, right? So he wants to present the feel. This is a serious establishment, right? This has a feel that's a cut above. He brought over the chef there, was the executive chef at Blue Duck, which is had a Michelin star, I think 5 years ago.
Yes.
So that's you have a serious dining array, and he has a sous chef. They're amazing. So that's a neat element that is worth mentioning, because there are, as you do your research, you'll find there are pretty serious professionals at layers that you wouldn't necessarily assume at first in these communities. Yeah.
Well, this is really helpful. Is there anything else we should share before we wrap up?
No, I think the simplest would be just no pun intended, but if you just get moving, you kind of get the wheels in motion. Right, obviously, as a part of the JK Moving team, the most established team in this region, our founder started the company at 17. Right, that's someone who he believes in getting things moving. It's kind of similar to you in some sense. He wants to let's do this thing, right? So we'd love to just help. Maybe a space planning consult is something that would be helpful as you begin to navigate these options and think it through, and then as the process begins, there's someone that we can bring to the table to help with every part of the process, right?
Absolutely.
There is someone who can do an excellent job for you at every stage, and the more people that are a part of your transition experience, your move, your next move, who understand the various elements and can work together in it, right? That just makes it all the more enjoyable.
Well, and when you have true professionals that are supporting you, that know what they're doing, that's a big deal. So on our side, on the real estate side, one of the things that's really challenging, people often will go with a friend or a family member or someone in the neighborhood as their real estate agent. And many families don't understand that the average real estate agent is only selling 2, 3, 4 homes a year, and most of those are with buyers. So they actually don't have the expertise to help you properly evaluate how to price your home and the right marketing strategy to get it sold for top dollar. And that is a really stressful thing. If you think, okay, we're going to put our house on the market and it's going to sell. Well, in this area, sadly, a lot of houses actually don't sell. And when we show people the data, they're like, what? There were that many homes in my area that didn't sell. So when you're going through the process of asking, how long is it going to take for my home to sell? What is it going to sell for? What do I need to expect? You have to study all of that data in detail, and we would love to help you with that.
And then that informs the strategy, right?
On your end, right?
Because then, we have a mutual friend, Jenny, who's very talented in the design and stage, right? So that part, some folks, stage, I don't know, right? But depending on the need for strategy, the stage could be, we're 2 weeks, we're out,
it
right?
Could be
we sell it 2 weeks, that kind of thing, right?
Changing. And then the other thing is, do you sell it as is or do you do work? Well, if you don't have an agent who does this every day, they are not going to give you the right advice. And often we find that sellers will overspend trying to do things that they notice that bother them about their home that the buyer would never notice. And then the things that the seller may not notice that could turn off a potential buyer, we could have just made some swaps in what they did that could have dramatically impacted their bottom line.
And all it took was, hey, Greg, can we have the team come and we're going to do a pre-move move. We're going to do a declutter, a stage move. We're going to remove rather than have to invest a lot on work, right? Yeah. Let's just remove some of the things that are personal and attached. We'll take it out, and now it's more valuable, right? So even just that, we'll store it. It's ready to go whenever you are. Those little steps, that might be the trick. Yeah.
Well, so just know, when you're ready, we would love to support you, and we'll put all of the resources that we discussed today below. We'll see you next time.